Welcome to the Founders Forum podcast, brought to you by the Foxwell Founders, where we interview some of the hottest minds in D2C right now and deep dive on their area of expertise. Everyone that we interview here is a cherished member of our Foxwell Founders community of over 550 advertisers worldwide and are at the cutting edge of what is working right now. I hope you enjoy this, and if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Andrew at Foxwell Digital. And now let's get stuck into this week's episode. Here are Edwin and Tris, our hosts.
Three best ways that we've ever seen to deal with this is
it's one of the things that's working really, really well for our agency right now.
Question of the week, right?
He's going to spill all the tea on TikTok for us. What is the oh wow strategy of the moment? If it's working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Who buys it even at that time, right? Hey guys, welcome to Foxwell Founders Forum. We are here with Trace Crawford, the brand manager of Supply.co. They are a 8-figure international shaving brand around the world. They are selling like hotcakes. We are so proud to have you on the pod, Trace, and thank you for joining us. Edwin, do you want to kick us off with your first question?
So, Trace, I want to set us up. Let's talk about letters to your younger self. When you were doing, now you're 8 figures, right? But knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself back when you guys maybe were doing much less, maybe when you guys were doing $100K a month, and then when you guys were doing maybe like $250,000 a month? What do you know now that you wish you knew back then?
Man, great question. First off, thanks for having me, guys. I'm stoked to be here. Love the question, man. Going back to my younger self, how to give some advice, it would be focus. That's advice I still give myself, or give myself and the rest of our team now, is focus. I know when we were getting started, we were trying so many different things. I mean, even if it's just, in that account, our business is largely driven by Meta. We've expanded now since we passed 8 figures. We've done some more things, but Meta is still the core of our business. And getting started, Meta was definitely the core of our business.
Yeah.
Which in that case, we are focused, because we're only doing really one driver of acquisition, but focus in terms of like what we're doing inside of those channels. Just like a variety of campaigns, overthinking things, just trying to do so much different things for creative, and just like not having a foundational understanding of the brand and what works. And this is something that, I'm still learning and still kind of coming to terms with, of like, not testing everything to an extent.
Not testing everything. So
everything. We test everything, but hiding behind like, hey, we're going to test this. There's a lot of times where, we still do this, but back in the day specifically, where we would like, okay, we're going to test everything. And when you say that, you enter the creative or the offer or the whatever you're testing with, like, okay, it's just a test. Like, we're going to get data and learn. And so you don't really put your best foot forward. And so now that the shift has been like, one, going back to my core point of like focus, like, hey, we know what our core message needs to be. This is what we need to say. This is who we're talking to. And this is what we're working on specifically right now. And this is what we need to execute on. But for testing it, like, we're going to work on the base asset first, the core thing we're working on. We want to make that the best possible thing, and then build the test off of that, and not build the test. That would be one of the biggest pieces of advice. We just wasted so much time and money testing ads and landing pages and offers, everything that goes into Meta, just to test. And we just like, again, that mindset.
And so you were testing. You were saying you're just testing to test, but you weren't learning anything from these tests.
We learn things, and a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, let's learn something from this test. But as time goes on, and we're primarily a single SKU brand. I mean, we recently have a new electric trimmer, so now we're technically really a 2 SKU brand, at least for acquisition, which has been a new challenge. But for us, it's always been like our single blade razor of what we acquire customers for. And we have other products we sell on the back end, but that's all we advertise.
Yeah.
And so it's like over time we have learnings, like, and when we test things so much over time, we get like the core learning from those things, not like statement is better than question in a headline, but like what messages work better, like the backbone of those messages work better. Like we understand our customer better now. And it's like those are the things that we learn that we don't want to go back against. Like we can always retest statement versus question if we really want to, but it's like, why do we need to test this every single time when we know this one thing works? Like let's just double down on that one thing and make that one thing better. If there's tests we can build into that, let's do that. But then the going back to when we started, it was like, hey, we have this new creative idea. Like, how do we want to test this? And they'd be like, well, let's kind of set it up. We'll have 3 different creatives and we'll throw different hooks on them. And it's just like, let's not approach it with a test unless there's something we want to learn. You know what I mean? Unless you're like, I want to know for sure that a statement works better than headline. I want to know that this offer messaging works better than this offer messaging. But for base testing, and I'm using ads as an example, it could be for landing pages as well, or offers, or wherever else you want to test in the business. Like, let's do it as best as we can, and then let's try to build some learnings into that. Like, let's expand on that. Like, our testing is more so if it's not intentional, we want to learn statement versus headline. If it's not intentional like that, like we want to give that ad or that whatever that thing we're testing is the best possible chance for success. And if it doesn't succeed, we want to try to get some learnings from that. So if it could be, hey, we ran this one core ad and we threw 4 different hooks on there, all based off our winning learnings. And it's like, okay, this doesn't perform. At least we understand. We got new information on 4 new hooks at the very least. And we can go deeper into the ad and kind of dissect why or why not that didn't work.
Gotcha. But it's all based on the original one that worked really, really well. You're going kind of more iterative on what you're doing rather than go and test something completely new. Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, don't overtest. I guess if I could simplify, like, don't overtest, don't test a test. Trust yourself. Like, be a marketer. Like, own, like, if you're like if you're making like large TV ads, like you have some data there, but like for the most part, it's like you are creating one large final investment of an asset and you're just going to run with it. You're not able to A/B test and you focus groups, whatever you're doing to test, but like for the most part, you're just letting it fly. It's like we need to have that same level of confidence too. And our job, what we're creating is arguably is much easier to execute on than a Super Bowl ad. So like let's have that confidence. We know what we're doing. Create the best possible ad. And if there's a test we want to build into that, let's make that test.
The sexy thing to do is just to test. But it's actually like that works. Spend the money on what works. It's so funny. We see this all the time where people come in and be like, "How many tests have you done?" It's like, well,
no.
Our job is to make money, not test. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Trace?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like we test a ton of stuff. I mean, everything is a test, but it's like all the tests are just like, we think this is a really good ad for XYZ reason, and we're going to test it. We'll see if it works, but we're not, unless we really want to know one thing over another, it's always like, we want to just see improved performance. Like, is this thing going to grow the ad account? Is this going to grow the business in one way or another?
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. So when you started, you were like, okay, you're testing everything, and then you had probably a point of epiphany, an inflection point that kind of said, right, we're stopping doing that, and now we're going to just focus on what's working. Was it a stop doing that, or just slow down the testing and actually just focus on what's working? You're saying you're one SKU, but like you've got your one main acquisition product. That's the kind of the strategy at the moment, is going deep on that and testing those kind of things. So do you have multiple types of people that buy that, or do you have how do you sell this in different markets? 'Cause you sell all over the world, right? So you must have different types of people. Is it different cohorts of people that are buying this kind of stuff?
Yeah, we really try to set up, I don't want to say by funnel type, but like kind of by funnel type. We don't run any dedicated retargeting. Everything we run is, basically for the longest time we ran one campaign, essentially, where it was like testing and scaling campaign were one thing. And we'd have like an ASC or a separate campaign. We have a cost cap campaign that we pull things out of and scale. But for the most part, the bulk of it was like one campaign, and that was the bulk of the spend. But we'll set things up kind of by funnel type.
You spend in that one? Like, tell just for shits and giggles. Tell me, like, how much is getting spent in that one campaign? Like just for shits and giggles.
I mean, we'd spend, 5 figures on that, like, 10 to 15K a day.
Per day.
Wow. Okay.
Hot
One
shit.
campaign.
Just like what, guys? That's like
On-
in Facebook Business Manager. Just like one line, one row is like 15K a day. That is fucking great. I love it.
I mean,
I
it
love
just, it's kind of came down to, again, a focus thing of like, ad account would be a distraction from other things in the business. Like, oh, we're going to micromanage the ad account. And like, it just worked better. Like, that was one of the unlocks in the business, was like when we went to this approach of like,
One go.
I was doing the media buying, a lot of other things in the business. It's like, well, I could waste my time micromanaging the account, overthinking little things like, well, is interest working or lookalikes? Is this audience better than this, or is attribution wrong, or there's just so many little questions. Or I could say, hey, I know broad works. I know this campaign structure works. I'm going to focus on the inputs that go into this, and I'm going to leave this on autopilot. I'm going to touch it like twice a week, and then all my focus is going to go on making better creative, making better offers, like better landing pages.
Like, so you got that one row, which is beautiful, and then is it like I click it and then I go to the ad set level and it's just like carnage? Is it just like a ton of ad set, or like tell me how many ads was
It
like?
is a lot. We actually had to sunset that campaign recently because it was an old campaign that Meta didn't support it anymore. It was it's a conversion campaign, and they switched to sales, or vice versa. It was one of the two. So we recently had to kill it, but I would have to go in and delete old ad sets because there were too many ad sets in the campaign that Meta would not allow me to add any more ad sets in it. So if you go into it, it's just like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ad sets. And granted, there's only like, we'll keep 10 or so live at a time, depending. We usually try to keep like, the general rule of thumb, we're not super strict by this, is like $500 per ad set. So like if we're spending 10K a day, then we can have 20 ad sets in the account. We don't want to go over that, but that's very rare that we're going like 20 plus ad sets. It's usually like maybe 5 to 10.
And you're running ABO or CBO?
CBO.
CBO. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, just CBO, one campaign, launching everything in it, and just have everything fight for spend. If it doesn't spend, then it doesn't win.
Whoa.
And we'll look at soft metrics as well for ads. So like if some ads like won't spend, but there might be some indicators on the soft metrics that might make us like, okay, let's put some more spend here, let's iterate. But for the most part, it's like spend is our primary KPI to an extent. Which we had worked with a new creative agency, and they came to us and they were looking at meta ROAS, and our meta ROAS is way off. It looks really good with a lot of view through. And they're like, hey, this ad's at $200 and has like a 5 ROAS. Our target's like a 1.6. And I was like, that's...
But it's not real. It's
yeah,
real.
It's not real. And I was like, look at spend. I was like, look at our other ads. Like, this thing spent $200 in a 7-day period. Like, this is not a winner.
Yeah. And so you were focusing a lot more on other things in the business that were really kind of moving the needle a lot faster. Is that making new bundles? Is that making kind of better, more optimizations in terms of shipping? Or like, what kind of stuff are you focusing on the business that was moving the needle faster than micromanaging the ad manager? Because I've heard that before in terms of that doesn't really work, where you sit there and you move budgets 3 or 4 times a day, and it gets really kind of heady. What kind of stuff were you focusing on that really moved the needle for you?
Yeah, I mean, to take a step back when I started, so I originally started as the head of growth for Supply, where I came in, they were bringing everything internal, so I led the in-house marketing team. So my job then was like meta, for the most part. Like, we did other things, it was like leading the marketing, but we were primarily meta. And so I was in the weeds every day with like, how do we make meta work? Well, how do we make creative work? How do we make better creative? How do we test these landing pages? How do we figure out offers? So I was much more in the weeds. Nowadays, I'm the brand manager, which is essentially I manage the brand. We got acquired by an aggregator a few years ago, in 2022, called Foundry Brands. So that's the title they use all around, is brand manager. But I still do a lot of the marketing for the brands, like kind of my core competency. But nowadays, I'll do more on the inventory planning, obviously managing the team, some more like managerial tasks. But going back to the start when I was much more in the weeds, I mean, it was really like landing pages, offers, emails and promotion planning.
Interesting.
Like making sure our flows are dialed in. We added a quiz, making sure that quiz is optimized, making sure we're testing that, make sure we're consistently testing, the landing page and the PDP. And, landing pages was similar to creative, where they were like, we had to test a lot of things to get to a breakthrough to really understand what worked best. Nowadays, we have these learnings, so it's much easier for us. We know for what the core of what works is, but that first, 6 months to a year was a lot of like, that's what it was like every single day was like trying to grow and test all these little things to just unlock those things we needed to hit to scale and meta.
Tell me some breakthroughs. Tell me some of those breakthrough moments that you had.
Yeah, we had a few breakthroughs in the early days. The first real breakthrough was our founder story ad. That was like the biggest breakthrough. Like that was the thing, and it still is the thing that's been massive to the business. But I started in August 2021, and it was a grind because that was right after the iOS updates. So the business was struggling a bit. Yeah. We weren't dying, but it was rough. We definitely had scaled down. Efficiency wasn't great. I mean, it was just, again, we relied almost solely on Meta. So it was rough, but, so we were just doing a lot of, again, testing, trying to figure things out. And for me, I had never managed an 8-figure brand. I never managed a spin before. I'd done all my media buying experience before then had been on my own brand, where I'd spent like maybe, I don't know if I'd ever even spent $1,000 a day of my own money. So it was, for me, honestly, it was a great time to come in and relearn, because everybody else was relearning at the same time. So it was a great learning process to come in, learn for myself, and then learn for the brand, like, what do we have to do? But it was a grind. Like, we struggled, like, to just figure things out. We tried so much creative. We tried landing pages, and we ended up having a decent Q4 that year, comparatively to what they had done the previous year, but it was still a struggle. And then we ended up launching 2 new razors in January, February, that next year, and they launched. They did really good, and they just kind of fell off. Like they just like were bad, and it was like I remember looking at the data before we launched our newest electric trimmer, and it's like first 3 weeks are like great, like well over 2. Our target is like a 1.5, 1.6, and then it just like falls off a cliff, and you can see all the soft metrics fall off a cliff. But it was like March, we ended up going with like a founder story ad, whitelisted through our founder. And we had a Kickstarter video we had a Kickstarter campaign for those razors. And the video was kind of a founder story, I guess. I mean, it was about the 2 razors, but it featured the founder. And so we took that, cut it up. It was still like 2 minutes long, which we're like, that's so long. This is never going to work. And ran it from the founder's page, and it just like, took off. And I remember at the same time I went to a Geek Out conference at that time. And I remember going, and I was like, oh, this sucks. Like I was bummed because we were just like, we're getting our ass kicked. We had this new razor, and like things weren't working. I remember looking at the business like at the conference, like during a speaker, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And I was like, because we'd never seen numbers like this. Like we were fighting. Like remember at the time, a lot of the conversations were like, how do we scale? How do we get this level of scale? Like we weren't hitting our targets. We're like a 1.2, 1.3. And it's like, what do we do? Like how low can we be? Like, can we actually push spin? Like we were trying to do everything else to like make this work. And then we ran this new ad, and it's like, oh shit, we're at 2.5 or 3 at scale. Like we quadruple spin, like 4x spin overnight. Like, and it consistently from this ad, like it wasn't just like, oh, one and done. Like we ended up selling out. We couldn't keep the product in stock like the entire year. We almost on pre-orders the entire year for these new products because we sold so many from this ad. And I think that was the biggest breakthrough. One creatively, because like we just hadn't got anything else to work. But it was an unlock because it kind of comes back to the original point of focus, where it's like we had tried so many things, and we've still, even to this day, we've kind of gotten away from like the idea. We've kind of tested too much to this day, even though we know that's still like the founder story for us. That core ad is what works the best for us. And maybe it's not founder's story, but like long form problem solution, validating our claims is what works. And we try to get away from that core, even if it's not founder story. If we try to
Okay.
go, hey, let's do a quick UGC, or oh, hey, we'll just show an unboxing of the product. We won't say anything about it. Like maybe that'll work. It never works. And I understand there's like it's an ecosystem, and you want to give Meta more to work with, and you want to mix things up, but like they just don't work for us from any level. Like not CPA is obviously not good, but there's no outside value or halo effect from those ads for us. Getting a bit off topic, but yeah, that was a huge breakthrough for us. Again, from revenue perspective, and also just a creative learning.
And even to this day, that is still that is your core that you work out of. Like the founder story, a longer format. Is it more polished or is it more UGC style founder story?
They are all just like mashups, different versions of him. I mean, to this day, we have at this point, we have like a roster of like 6 core ads. I would say 6 net new individual assets that we'd shot of Patrick, the founder, and told different stories that have been massive winners. And we just kind of like, we just keep trying to expand that and try to do new things. But like, those are the base of the ad account that we'll try to iterate, put new hooks on, mix them up. But like, I mean, it's happened multiple times in the business. And I always have to remind myself, like, when these moments happen, I have to remind myself, like, oh shit, creative is like, it is still to this day, even as we've grown, it is still a massive needle mover. I mean, even last August, we had another massive win, like a new creative that literally almost doubled our business. Because we're trying to comp for it. We're about to have to comp for it right now, and people are like, "What happened last year?" I'm like, "Creative."
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I mean,
What?
focus. Like we're doing all this other stuff on the business right now. Getting ready for Q4, and there's a lot more going on. But it's like, man, we should make a good ad.
Wait, but Trick, you're holding out on me. You 2x last year on the back of this one creative. You got to tell me what it is.
We literally, I don't know if we 2x, but like it was a massive increase, and it was like I don't want to say saved us, but like the summer just sucks, and we're kind of a little rough right now. We're fine, but like June and July summer days are not good. But it was another founder story. This was a huge unlock for us because it was a new angle within the founder story. For our razors, like the thing that really works for us, again, is problem solution. But we sell premium single blade razors, and the main appeal that we found product market fit in Facebook ads is leading into irritation caused by multi blade razors, and so that's mostly what we've spoken to. This ad was a huge unlock. So we spoke more towards the cost savings, because when you're buying multi blade razors, you're buying cartridges repeatedly, and those cartridges are much more expensive, whereas our blades are $1 per blade, and so it's like $30 a year, opposed to hundreds of bucks if you're buying more expensive cartridges. And that was a huge unlock for us, because again, it unlocked this whole new angle that we can expand outside of that core problem solution founder story format.
And how did you figure that out? Like, did you just go on like some platform and you asked a bunch of people, and then was it a post-purchase survey? Like, how did you figure out that angle?
I mean, for us, it's like, so we have an internal team, which I love having an internal team for this reason, because we are always in the weeds of everything. We're always discussing ideas, and so like a lot of it was just osmosis. Like it wasn't like a breakthrough, like, oh, we should make an angle around cost. Like we've known that one of our main objections is cost, and so like we pulled data points from comments. We looked at competitors like Harry's, Gillette, Dollar Shave Club, those kind of brands, and just like we've seen people comment like, oh, they're so expensive, or I hate having to buy all these razors all the time. And we knew the costs, like we knew them from our perspective, and so the idea came just from repetitive research and being around our customers and knowing the product. And so I think we had tested it before, but like this was the one that really worked. For this one we really focused on, like for our top of the funnel ads, like it's problem solution, but like the intro of the ad is always the most important for us. Like we know that the latter half of the ad doesn't really matter. Like we can, like it's much less important. Like they can be completely templatized. We can say the same thing every single time as long as that intro is good. And so like this ad was like very like expose. Like we focused on like, we didn't make it like too upfront about the problem. Like, are you spending too much on razors? I mean, I think it's one of our hooks, but like, are you spending too much on razors? Like, stop doing that. It was more like, this is why you're spending too much on razors, and we focus on like the razor and blades business models, and like, hey, this is why Gillette and other companies charge you so much. We had a really good line in there about like we can't spend $1 billion to convince you to buy our razor, but we can show you the facts. We have literally a screenshot because Gillette sponsors a football stadium, and so we have a screenshot of their like Gillette Labs, like massive like floating render on the stadium. But like one that ad performed well and still performs incredibly well. But like my favorite part about that ad is when I went and looked at the comments, the number one comment on that ad was, "This is a great ad."
Yeah.
Which I was like, that's insane. Even the trolls are like, this is a really good ad. I'm like, I'm not gonna buy this. I don't want this, but this is a really good ad.
Margaritas all around. That's like Happy Friday.
Yeah, we did something right. So
love that.
I was huge on that.
And so, Trace, with that, I mean, we're talking about like new creatives that you're finding all the time. Just back to your original kind of statement there around like you focus down. So you obviously found that your founder topic or your founder videos seem to be like the ones that are winning, the ones that are changing. The Gillette ad, the comparison ad sounds to be look at kind of a us versus them kind of approach seems to work very, very well for you. When it comes to like other things we're talking about there, you have new launches of new products. Is it the new bundles that you're putting out there? You're saying you're prepping for Black Friday now, and the Black Friday last year in 22 was better than previous. What drove that Black Friday to be better other than the ads? Was there a specific kind of model that you were running? Was there did you have a certain level of people having to buy a certain amount for free shipping? What was it that drove your Black Fridays?
Yeah, so for us, for all of our offers, we're not a discount heavy brand, so we want to avoid discounts at all costs. And also we know that our LTV is a weakness of the business, but we know that the more products we can get in people's hands, the higher LTV customers will have. As well as because the LTV is low, we want to push the AOV up as much as possible. So for our offers, are always bundle focused of like, how can we get more products in and show a higher savings percentage, but still have good margins? And so like at this point, we've tested a lot of offers, and what really works for us is always a gift with purchase. And we've tested messaging on those offers. Like, we've tested like advertising a savings percentage. So if we adding in the value of the gift with purchase into the overall savings. So instead of saying like free razor stand, it'll be like up to 35% off bundles, and just bundling in that savings from the stand. But for us, again, it's bundles that work well for us. We run our offer early. We start in November, and that works really well. I think we had a kind of a breakthrough this past Father's Day where we ran our Father's Day sale much earlier, and our Father's Day sale ended up doing incredibly well at the end. I strongly believe is because we were able to get learnings at the start and scale them up, and kind of come back to my first original point of focus. Like, we didn't do as much testing this year. It's primarily because of bandwidth. We were working on our new product launch, so we didn't put as much focus into Father's Day creative. But it worked out better because instead of wasting our time testing a lot of creative, we found out what worked and we scaled it up, and it just worked. So we're running we run our sale much earlier. We're running it pretty much all the way from like the first week of November all the way to the end of the year. This past year it works really well.
Continuously,
continuously. We'll stop it. Yeah, we'll stop it at Christmas. So what we'll do is we'll do two sales, but it's essentially the same thing. We'll do a Black Friday sale and a holiday sale. Last year we ended up switching products because of inventory. It's still something I'm considering. I like the idea of having two kind of separate sales because it's Black Friday and then we still want to lean into holiday afterwards, but it also adds a lot of complexity where it doesn't need to be. Like last year, we're like, we'll switch offers. We need to. And it's like, oh shit, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. And now we can't run any of the ads that originally worked. We have to get new creative for this. And the original offer is actually better. So like, why are we switching? Just to switch. We'll run it through the whole year. Last year we got too complicated last year. Like, can I go back to the original message of focus? It's kind of like focus / keep it simple. I think the message keeps changing, but similar ethos there. We did too much last year, honestly, with like we had some new colors releasing and some other new products. We try to like, do a release each week and like lead into that. And it just kind of became too complicated and like, it just didn't really work. So honestly, November last year was not great. I mean, it was good. It was better than the previous year, but it was like not as better as we'd hoped. The real unlock for us came from December and the holiday period and gift giving. That's where we got a huge unlock. We crushed December last year compared to the previous year.
Why?
For two reasons. For one, it was part of it was planning. And we didn't do as good of a job last year planning as we could have, but it was much better than the year before that, where we knew we wanted to do a holiday sale. We had assets ready. We had planned for the holiday sale period, where the previous year it was like all Black Friday, and then we got on Black Friday, and it's like, oh shit, we still have like, 2.5 weeks in December before we get our shipping cut off, and we're still zooming right now. Like, what do we do? Last year, again, we had that prepped. We weren't all of our focus last year was still like, okay, Black Friday, what do we do? And then we'll do holiday sale. We didn't execute on gifting as well as I wish we had, but we did do some things that we didn't do the previous year that were huge for us. And so December was absolutely massive. It really made up for us in November. So, I mean, I guess like takeaways for us, like keep it simple, start early, find out what works, scale what works, lean into gifting for us. Like we're a male focused brand, but like leaning into female gift givers. It's always something we have tried to do these periods and then for hit or miss, but we were able to really get some unlocks and lean into it last year, which gave us a huge lift.
Speaking of scaling and we're planning inventory and stuff like that, one of the things that obviously the worst nightmare is where you're scaling and an ad pops off and you're like, oh, this is amazing and things are going fantastic, and then boom, you run out of product. The worst nightmare. So how are you planning for that stuff like that? Are you have you shortened your supply chain? Have you worked out kind of what you need for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or even into Father's Day? Like how are you planning for that kind of stuff? What information are you giving to the supply team? Pardon me, the pun.
Yeah.
But what information are you giving to that team to be able to plan for that?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, we have an excellent supply chain manager who helps a ton with this, and I've experienced firsthand the pain of running out of inventory. Like I mentioned, we had that original unlock with the founder story. Like we could not keep product in stock. Granted, then we're doing everything internal. We didn't have a supply chain manager. We were kind of just like freestyling it, and we just like could not keep up with the scale there. But for us now, it's like planning well in advance. Like we had Q4 offers. I don't say locked in, but like drafted. Like, hey, here's what we're likely going to do. Like into Q1, and then we set our growth plan for the entire year. So we know what we're targeting for Q4. And for us, again, we do a lot of the same things. Like this Q4 is going to be very similar to last Q4. This year we have a new product that's going to be, we're adding in. So that's going to be the main new thing this year. But outside of that, our core razor funnels are going to be very similar. So we know how things are going to perform directionally. And so it's like, hey, here's our growth plan for the quarter. We're going to start at this period. We know at this period we're going to see this kind of increase on these products. Here are the tiers of expectations. Like here's 20. We'll do like 20th, 40th, 60th, 80th percentile. Like make sure we have inventory to support this 80th percentile or the more than the 80th percentile outcome here. And again, because we know how we're going to perform, I don't want to say exactly, but like we're pretty dialed in on what the lift we're going to see from this offer is, what the split between the products is going to be. It's like, okay, I know how much to order, and I just know I need to order to this extreme outcome, the best case scenario, essentially. I would always prefer for us to just order unlimited inventory, which I've been told we can't do because of cash flow, which a valid objection. But yeah, I'm always like, why can't we just order like double this? And like, Trace, we can't do that. We don't have enough cash. I'm like, it'd be much easier if we could just order like a whole lot more just in case. But yeah, that's generally how we approach it. And again, we have an excellent supply chain manager who does a great job keeping an eye on these things and making sure we give her all the inputs that she needs and checks and balances on the way.
Makes sense. You can't just go and order the world and then hopefully it sells. It's going to make kind of balance on the way out.
Yeah, and for us, like on our razors, like because we don't discount, if we ever get into a position where we're overstocked or we need to liquidate any inventory, like we can do that super easily with just a small discount. And so I'm never overly concerned about okay, are we way too overstocked because it's just easy for us to liquidate those.
So we've talked about a ton of stuff about like the inventory, about the breakthroughs. Give us some war stories. Like you guys now are at an 8-figure brand. There have to be some bumps and bruises, some scenes where you're on the hill holding up the sword all bloody and victorious. Give us some war stories.
Oh, man, I think I'd probably go back to that same time where we scaled that first ad and we're out of stock. That was a tough period because we kept going out of stock, and we had to figure out how to do pre-orders, which was a huge pain in the ass at the time to make that work from an operations standpoint as well as like the marketing standpoint of it. As well as we had to keep just mixing up bundles, and one of the hardest things was like Meta just kept breaking because we would run out of stock, and the ads would just break. So we had to basically like rebuild our ad account multiple times because we would when we go out of stock, and so Meta's like, oh shit, like it's out of stock, this is a bad experience. Or we'd shift to pre-orders, which would also shift, which would break the ads because again it's a different experience, so the estimated action rate would just change so much. And so we have to just reset those ads, or like we have to basically rebuild a new ad or new campaign for the pre-orders, which was like up and down, and we ended up scaling up with pre-orders and having success on pre-order. But that period was just like a nightmare, honestly, as well as just like we had that core unlocked, but there's still so much we're trying to figure out. Yeah. Like, how does this work? We had 2 new razors at the time. It's like figuring out like how do we balance the messaging between these, and like how do we make these funnels work was super difficult. So maybe it didn't sound like too much of a war story, but at the time it was headache after headache every single.
It sounded tough.
How did you make it? How did you end up making it work? Because you had these 2 things. Like it happens with a lot of brand owners, right? Like they have this core unit that they came riding on the horse with, and then eventually they develop more, right? And they got to balance, like you said. And how did you guys end up balancing?
Balancing the actual inventory, or like the process of like
the messaging and stuff, because you guys had the new SKUs, and then you had to balance what was working, and then the new stuff. Like what ended up happening?
Yeah, this is another breakthrough for us. And so we had the 2 new products, and I was like, okay, how do we message these? How do we clarify? Do we advertise one at a time? Do we advertise both? What we ended up going with was sending everything to a quiz. And then so the core ads were like, both products did the same thing. Like I mentioned originally, like the latter half of the ad doesn't really matter once we get them hooked. And so the core message of the ad, like they both did the same thing. They both serve the same purpose, except for like one is easier to use and one is for advanced users, has a shave dial on it. And so let's just double down that core message of single blade shaving is better for X reason. And then we'll send customers to a quiz. So that way we have one core message, and then the customers can self-select through the quiz. As well as the quiz has a bunch of added benefits, like we get great lead capture from it. We don't have to sell them direct right there in that moment. We get them on the email flow, so we have multiple touch points after that to sell them through email, as well as it's a much easier ask as well. Like, hey, take this quiz is much easier than say, hey, buy my $70 razor.
Okay, and the afterflows, they were ROAS positive, like because you capture the email, they take the quiz. Some of them will immediately purchase, but a lot of them go into post flows, and the numbers on the post flows were profitable. Is that correct?
Yeah, we would scale. I mean, we look at ads every 3 or 4 days, and so we look at like the ad performance there, and we're always profitable there. But then we'd always see a delayed attribution from those quiz flows. Something that we did for a while that we got away from was we tried to scale off the back of cost per email sign up in Triple Whale, which it wouldn't be our leading indicator, but at times like when we were scaling heavily, like performance on the ROAS or CPA side would look a little bit worse, but we know that, okay, we're getting a $5 email sign up here. And I know that a $5 email sign up in, 28 days after going through this flow is going to be profitable. And so like, if we're, if that break even email sign up $7, we're at 5, like I feel confident that we can scale up profitably, even though like the day-to-day ROAS right now may not be as good as we hope.
Okay. That is helpful to know.
It's insightful. So thank you so much for that, Trace. I really appreciate it. There's a ton of stuff that we're seeing from your side that, so many agencies are like, oh, you've got an ad, just scale it. Well, there's a lot more behind it. There's a lot more behind actually doing that. There's communication involved, and as well. There's a lot of this narrative at the moment going around test landing pages, test new ideas, and it's just sometimes it got to focus on what's working.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify, like I'm all for testing. Like test everything, but don't hide behind your tests. Like make the best possible thing. Like be a good marketer and knock it out. Know your customer. Don't just be like, well, we're going to test it. That's where testing it goes wrong. Like we still test everything, but it's always like, how do we make the best base version of this? And then we'll test out of that.
Guys, we just had a masterclass on breakthrough after breakthrough with Trace. He told us all the tea on growing an 8-figure shaving brand, all the stuff that worked for them, the founder stories, the quizzes. It has been unbelievable, guys. I'm Edwin.
I'm Chris.
Thank you, guys.